Around the World in 80 Days, Chapter 17, In Search of a Ship. Detective Fix had been watching Mr. Fogg and Aouda since their arrival at the quay. He approached Mr. Fogg innocently and asked,
"Were you not, like me, sir, a passenger on the Rangoon?" "I was,"
replied Mr. Fogg.
"but we have not been introduced." "Pardon me,"
said Fix.
"I thought I would find your servant here."
"Do you know where he is, sir?" asked Aouda anxiously.
"What?
Responded Fix, pretending to be surprised.
He's not with you?"
"No," said Aouda. "We have not seen him since yesterday. Could he have boarded the Carnatic without us?"
"Did you intend on sailing on the Carnatic as well?"
asked Fix.
"I am very disappointed, but I've missed it also. Apparently there won't be another steamer for a week." "But there are other vessels in the harbor besides the Carnatic,"
replied Mr. Fogg with confidence. He held out his arm to Aouda and they walked off. Fix grew alarmed. He had not expected Fogg to be so determined. For 3 hours, Fix watched Mr. Fogg and Aouda wander the docks looking for a ship. He began to hope again. Then a sailor approached Mr. Fogg.
"Is your honor looking for a boat?"
he asked.
"Do you have a boat ready to sail?"
asked Mr. Fogg.
"Yes, your honor.
Replied the sailor.
The best in the harbor."
"Will you agree to take me to Yokohama?"
asked Mr. Fogg.
"Is your honor joking?"
said the sailor.
"It isn't possible."
"I have missed the Carnatic, and I must get to Yokohama by November 14th.
said Fogg.
I offer you £100 per day and an additional £200 if I reach Yokohama in time."
"Are you in earnest?"
asked the sailor.
"Very much so."
said Mr. Fogg. The sailor walked away a little distance and gazed out to sea. He was struggling between the temptation of such a large sum and the danger of traveling so far. Fix watched in suspense. Mr. Fogg turned to Aouda and asked her,
"You would not be afraid, would you, madam?"
"Not with you, Mr. Fogg," she answered.
"Well, sailor?"
said Mr. Fogg.
"Your honor, I could not risk myself, my men, or my little boat on such a long voyage at this time of year. Besides, we would not reach Yokohama in time."
answered the sailor. Fix breathed more freely.
"But,"
added the sailor.
"it might be arranged another way."
Fix held his breath.
"How?"
asked Mr. Fogg.
"By going to Shanghai."
said the sailor.
"Sir, I must take the American steamer at Yokohama, not at Shanghai."
said Mr. Fogg.
"It isn't necessary to go as far as Yokohama.
said the sailor.
The San Francisco steamer does not start from Yokohama. It begins at Shanghai."
"You're sure of that?"
asked Mr. Fogg.
"Perfectly."
replied the sailor.
"And when does the boat leave Shanghai?"
asked Fogg.
On November 11th at 7 in the evening.
said the sailor.
We have 4 days before us.
"And when can we leave?"
asked Mr. Fogg.
In an hour.
The sailor replied.
"It is a deal. Are you the master of the boat?"
asked Fogg.
Yes.
replied the sailor.
My name is John Bunsby, captain of the Tankadere.
The two men sealed their deal, and Mr. Fogg gave John Bunsby a sum of money in advance. "But poor Passepartout," urged Aouda. "We can't leave him behind."
"I will do all I can to find him,"
replied Mr. Fogg. Before heading out in search of Passepartout, Mr. Fogg offered to let Mr. Fix join them as a passenger on the Tankadere. Mr. Fix could do nothing but accept. In a nervous state, Fix boarded the Tankadere while Mr. Fogg and Aouda went to the local police station. Phileas Fogg left Passepartout's description with the police. He also left a sum of money to be spent in search of him. By now it was 3 o'clock. They had stopped at the hotel, picked up their luggage, and arrived at the Tankadere just as the last of the boat's supplies were being stored. The Tankadere was a little boat with 2 tall masts. Its deck was as white as ivory, and all its brass fittings were polished to a shine. The boat was as graceful as a racing yacht, and it was obvious the captain took pride in it. Mr. Fogg and Aouda found Fix already on board. Below deck was a square cabin with cots set in the walls. In the center was a table with a swinging lamp above. The accommodations were small but neat.
"I'm sorry to have nothing better to offer you,"
said Mr. Fogg to Fix, who bowed without responding. The detective felt humiliated for relying on the kindness of Mr. Fogg.
He may be a rascal,
Thought Fix.
but he is a polite one.
The sails were raised at 10 minutes past 3. Mr. Fogg and Aouda, who were seated on the deck, cast a last glance at the quay in the hopes of seeing Passepartout. The Frenchman, however, did not appear.
You can imagine my disappointment when I found out that I had missed seeing Shanghai with Mr. Fogg and Aouda. Although, considering the way Mr. Fogg travels, I guess I wouldn't have seen much of it anyway. Oh, how unfortunate. For many years, Shanghai was a small Chinese port. Before the 19th century, Asian countries had little to do with the West. They preferred to trade with each other. But during the first part of this century, Asian countries felt more pressure to begin trading with the West. When countries like China and Japan refused, European and American armies sometimes attacked them. As if attacking a country would make it more willing to do business with you. In 1839, Britain and China went to war over the opium trade, and 3 years later, Britain won. As a result, the port of Shanghai was open to international trade. Many foreigners settled there, mainly British, French, and American citizens.